There comes a quiet moment in every life when you stand before your own reflection and realize the person looking back feels unfamiliar. Not broken, not failing, just distant from who you once imagined you'd become. It's like something subtle yet essential has slipped away over time. A gentle ache forms, and not from loss, but from the awareness that you've been living slightly out of sync with your own potential. And that feeling, that strange, uncomfortable clarity, is where real transformation begins. Because before change is ever seen on the outside, it begins inside as a whisper, then a question, then a rebellion against the life you've lived on autopilot. We like to romanticize change as a sudden breakthrough, a lightning bolt of decision or inspiration. But the truth is far quieter and far more demanding. Real transformation isn't just about choosing differently. It's about seeing life through a new inner lens, dissolving outdated beliefs, and rebuilding who you understand yourself to be. This internal shift doesn't happen overnight. It arrives slowly, through uneasy thoughts, long silences, nights spent wondering who you truly are, and moments most people run from. Psychology has studied this deeply. Carl Jung called it becoming whole. Maslow described it as the path to your truest potential, not just survival, but awakening. But behind all the theories, the truth is painfully simple. Change begins when the pain of staying the same starts to weigh heavier than the fear of doing something different. Most never reach that point willingly. They repeat emotional cycles learned in childhood, guided by invisible scripts, quiet beliefs like, "I'm not enough. I'm not meant for more. It's too late for me." These thoughts may seem harmless, but they quietly frame your life like invisible walls. Transformation begins the second you notice those walls exist, not when you break them, but when you finally see them. Awareness is rebellion. Recognition is the first revolution. And in that moment, the very first spark of noticing, you are no longer completely controlled by the story that once imprisoned you. Because every time you question the old self, the brain begins to rewire. Science calls it neuroplasticity. Your mind reshaping itself in response to new truth. A new you is not imagined. A new you is built neuron by neuron. And all of it begins here, Scotland, with one uneasy realization. You are meant for more than the version of yourself you settled into. The story continues. Change is only beginning. If noticing who you've become is the first step, what happens when the old identity begins to fight back? Most people never pause long enough to see the programming beneath their lives. They repeat familiar routines, reliving emotions inherited from childhood, believing thoughts that were never originally theirs, not because they are weak, but because the mind clings to what feels known, even when that familiarity quietly suffocates the soul. We are shaped by early voices, cultural expectations, old memories that still breathe in the corners of our thinking. These silent beliefs become invisible armor, or invisible cages. Whispers like, "People like me don't get far. I always mess things up. Why hope when life never changes?" They don't shout. They settle in quietly until they define what feels possible. And in that hidden blueprint, our days begin to repeat themselves. The journey of transformation begins not with action, but with curiosity. Not tearing walls down immediately, but simply noticing they were never stone to begin with. Awareness is not loud. It is gentle, patient, rebellious in silence. And once you see the script, you can't pretend it never existed. Modern neuroscience gives language to this miracle. The brain is not concrete. It's alive, sculpted by thought, shaped by attention. Every moment you question an old belief, your mind begins to reorganize itself. New circuits spark. Old neural pathways weaken. Identity is not fixed. It's written and rewritten with every repeated truth and every conscious choice. Transformation is not mystical, it is biological. It is the body learning a new emotional rhythm, the brain rearranging itself to match a life you're daring to imagine. Yet here is the paradox that so many face. They want change but resist discomfort. They crave a new chapter but cling to the familiar lines of the old one. They want the breakthrough without the breakdown, the growth without the uneasy shedding that precedes it. But discomfort is not an enemy. It is proof that the old identity is beginning to loosen. The ego fights because its job is survival, not expansion. When you begin to evolve, the old self trembles, not because you are failing, but because you are leaving the old world behind. If you've ever tried waking earlier, or speaking kindly to yourself, or making a brave decision, you've felt that resistance. That inner tension isn't laziness. It's identity preservation. Psychologists call it psychological homeostasis, the mind fighting to remain who it thinks you are, and that is the first truth you must face. Transformation does not start with a new habit. It starts with a new identity. You cannot rise while clinging to the version of yourself that survived rather than thrived. You don't force a new life, you become someone who naturally lives it. And once identity shifts, action follows like breath. If the mind protects the old self so fiercely, how do you step into a new identity without collapsing back into who you were? Think about it for a moment. Every lasting change in your life began not with effort, but with identity. If you see yourself as someone who is disorganized, you may clean your space, but chaos soon returns like a familiar echo. If you believe you're someone who just isn't confident, you may act bold for a day, but the old insecurity slips back in like a shadow you never outran. Behavior bends to identity. The mind returns to what it believes to be true. But when you whisper to yourself, I am becoming someone who values clarity, or I am learning to trust my voice, something subtle yet profound shifts. You stop forcing behavior and begin inviting transformation. You stop trying to become someone and begin recognizing you already are, beneath dust, beneath doubt, beneath history. That is why healing, therapy, journaling, and deep self-reflection matter, not because they offer tips, but because they help bring the unconscious into daylight. They reveal the quiet stories that quietly built your life. Once you see a pattern, it loses its power. A hidden chain only binds you in darkness. Yet let's be honest, and the journey isn't neat. Growth is not a staircase. It is a circle. You rise, you doubt, you slip, you rise again. You gather clarity, lose it, rediscover it in a different form. Transformation is not a straight path. It is a return again and again to the self you're learning to trust. In mythology, heroes do not ascend without trials. They leave comfort, lose certainty, face inner monsters, and return changed. Modern psychology says the same. Change has a liminal phase, an in-between space where the old self dissolves, but the new self isn't yet solid. It is uncomfortable, uncertain, sometimes terrifying, but necessary. During this phase, the brain enters deep self-reflection, identity rewriting from the inside out. A new inner story forms, and with each repeated thought, each emotionally charged belief, the mind begins to accept, this is who I am now. Not a performance, a becoming. This is why when someone says, you become what you believe, it is not metaphor, it is neurology. Beliefs are thoughts repeated with emotion until the brain wires them into truth. And the only way to change the truth you live is to practice a new one. Slowly, patiently, bravely. But here is the hidden trap, the one that quietly breaks most transformation journeys before they truly begin. People try to build new lives with old identities. They tell themselves, I will be confident, while secretly clinging to a story of insecurity. They speak goals aloud but feel unworthy underneath. They push themselves forward, but their subconscious still lives in old fear. The inner world always wins. Change demands honesty first, not effort. The courage to say, here's where I hurt. Here's what I've been avoiding. Here is what scares me. That kind of truth is not weakness, it's cleansing. You don't disinfect a wound by pretending it isn't there. You don't evolve by rejecting who you've been, only by understanding it. Real transformation does not attack the self. It welcomes every part home. So if honesty is the doorway to becoming, what happens when old emotions, when fear, shame, doubt begin rising to the surface? When you finally allow honesty to surface, something unexpected happens. Emotions you once pushed away begin to rise. Old fears, childhood echoes, insecurities you thought you outgrew, grief you never named, they return, not to destroy you but to be released. And yet most people panic here. They think pain returning means failure. They assume doubt is proof they haven't grown. But the truth is the opposite. Emotions don't reappear to punish you. They surface because your mind finally feels safe enough to let you feel them. Transformation is not about deleting who you once were. It's about making peace with the parts of you that needed protection. Growth doesn't whisper, be stronger. It whispers, come closer. Let's understand. Procrastination, anger, shutting down, withdrawing. These aren't flaws, they're defense systems. They were built by a younger version of you that learned survival before it learned self-love. When you shame them, they cling tighter. When you meet them with compassion, they soften. This is why emotional awareness matters. You cannot change what you refuse to feel. Anger may not be rage, and it might be unspoken boundaries. Sadness isn't weakness. It may be mourning a version of you that never got support. Anxiety isn't chaos. Sometimes it's the emotional tremor between who you were and who you're becoming. When you stop running from feelings and start listening, you turn emotion from an enemy into a compass. Mindfulness, self-compassion, these aren't spiritual buzzwords. They are psychological tools proven to rewire the brain. When you greet discomfort with curiosity instead of judgment, the nervous system shifts out of survival. The amygdala, the alarm bell, quiets. The prefrontal cortex, when your clarity, decision-making, and vision lights up. Kindness toward yourself is not indulgence. It is neurological permission to evolve. And here's the quiet miracle. Transformation rarely explodes. It accumulates. It lives in micro moments. The seconds you pause instead of react. The breath you take before repeating an old pattern. The gentle no spoken where silence once lived. These aren't small victories, they are revolutions. Over time, the old self doesn't die violently. It simply loses its hold. It fades like fog in morning light. And suddenly, without dramatic fireworks or applause, you realize you're acting from a place of calm rather than fear. You notice you've stopped chasing approval. You realize silence no longer feels lonely. It feels like presence. This is the quiet power of healing. You don't become someone else. You finally become yourself. But if transformation grows in stillness and honesty, why does the journey still feel like chaos when you're in the middle of it? Because growth rarely feels like growth when you're inside it. It feels messy, disorienting, even frightening at times. You begin to question everything, your habits, your relationships, your beliefs, the roles you've played just to belong. The ground beneath you shifts, but the new foundation hasn't fully formed yet. This middle stage isn't comfortable, it's vulnerable. It's the space where the old identity dissolves, but the new one hasn't fully stabilized. Psychologists call this the liminal phase, the doorway between who you were and who you're becoming. It's the inner wild, the emotional wilderness. You're not lost, you're rewiring. And that confusion you feel? It's not proof that you're breaking, it's proof that you're shedding. In this phase, the brain is hard at work. The default mode network, the part of your mind that holds your self-story, comes alive. It revisits memories, examines old narratives, questions what once felt absolute. This is your subconscious rewriting the biography you lived by. Sometimes it feels like identity erosion, but really it's identity expansion. You're not collapsing, you're reforming. And here's what many miss. Self-belief doesn't shift in one dramatic moment. It evolves through repetition, emotion, and evidence. Every time you choose differently, a new neural thread strengthens. Every time you stand up for yourself, every time you choose peace over chaos, every time you resist returning to the old version of you, the mind begins to trust your new direction. Belief is not a thought, it's a pattern. And patterns change with courage, not perfection. Yet most people stumble here because they rely solely on willpower. They try to force change while secretly holding on to an outdated self-image. They whisper, "I want to be strong," while their inner voice still says, "I am weak." They chase confidence while clinging to the story of inadequacy. The subconscious always recognizes truth over performance. The inner world refuses to be fooled by external effort. That's why transformation begins not with pressure, but with self-honesty so gentle it becomes liberation. You stop pretending to be okay. You stop acting like you don't hurt. You don't shame the scars, you acknowledge them. And in that soft confession, the armor you spent years wearing slowly loosens. True change doesn't begin with discipline. It begins with acceptance, not the kind that says this is all I'll ever be, but the kind that whispers, this is where I am, and I'm ready to grow from here. Because growth isn't self-rejection, it's self-reunion. You don't fight to become worthy. You discover you always were. When the old identity falls away and emotions rise, how do you stay steady long enough for the new self to take root? To remain steady in this vulnerable in-between phase, you must learn the art of emotional presence, not fighting your inner storms, but staying with them without drowning. Because self-transformation is not about forcing yourself forward, it's about learning to sit with your truth long, enough for it to soften and reshape you. Emotions are not the enemy, resistance is. What you refuse to feel controls you. What you face, you dissolve. Anger isn't always rage. Sometimes it's a boundary that was crossed too many times. Sadness isn't weakness. It can be the grief of an old identity falling away. Anxiety isn't chaos, it's your nervous system learning life, without fear as its guide. When you stop numbing, running, distracting, and start listening, emotions turn from battles into messages, and slowly you stop being scared of your own inner world. Instead, you begin to understand it. Every feeling becomes a doorway, a teacher, a signpost pointing toward what still needs care, what still longs for healing. This is why mindfulness and self-compassion are so powerful. They quiet the survival instinct. They shift you out of fight or flight and into awareness. The amygdala relaxes, the prefrontal cortex lights up, clarity returns. You stop reacting and start responding. You learn emotional literacy, the ability to understand where feelings come from instead of becoming them. And something remarkable happens. You start catching yourself. Before the spiral, before the self-sabotage, before you shrink back into the old version of you, you pause. You breathe. You choose differently. That pause is transformation in real time. Those small moments are identity rewiring. Eventually, what once triggered you begins to lose its power. Silence feels safe. Solitude feels grounding. You no longer rush to keep busy, you allow stillness. The nervous system that once lived in alarm begins to trust calm. These changes don't come with applause. They arrive quietly, a softer tone in your voice, a slower heartbeat in conflict, a new willingness to say no or walk away from chaos, a subtle but profound shift from reacting to choosing. And the miracle is this. You didn't force yourself into strength, you grew into peace. This is psychological maturity, not the absence of pain, but the presence of perspective. Not perfection, but grounding. You respond to life instead of surviving it. You stop proving and start becoming. You stop bracing and start breathing. This phase isn't glamorous and it's not loud. It's gentle, steady, and deeply human. It's you learning to hold yourself, to trust yourself, to meet life with presence instead of panic. And with every grounded breath, the identity you once clung to dissolves, replaced by one built not on fear but on clarity. But once the inner world begins to shift, how does your outer world, your habits, relationships, and environment evolve with you? As your inner world shifts, your outer world inevitably begins to change with it. Because identity does not evolve in isolation. It reshapes your choices, your environment, the people you gravitate toward, and the ones you quietly outgrow. Transformation reaches a point where it's no longer just internal awareness. It becomes visible in the life you build, the conversations you no longer entertain, and the boundaries you finally honor. Not everyone around you will understand this shift. Some will feel threatened by your growth, because your evolution disrupts the comfort of who they knew you to be. You may notice certain relationships feel heavier, conversations feel draining, or environments once familiar now feel misaligned. This isn't loss, it's clarity. Growth doesn't always remove people. It reveals who can walk with you into your next chapter and who belongs to older pages of your story. Environment matters more than most realize. The brain responds to the world around it, to voices, routines, energy, expectations. You cannot plant a new identity in soil that constantly waters your old one. Surround yourself with cynicism, and your dreams shrink to fit. Surround yourself with fear, and courage withers. Surround yourself with those who see your potential, and your nervous system begins to believe in possibility again. Psychologists call this environmental design, shaping your surroundings to align with who you're becoming. It's not about perfection, it's about intention. Choosing spaces that support your calm, engaging with minds that uplift your thinking, letting go of triggers, temptations, and emotional debris from your past self. Because everything around you, every word you hear, every habit you reinforce, every space you occupy, whispers to your brain who you believe yourself to be. And the deeper truth is this. Belief doesn't just live in thought, it lives in posture, tone, breath, choices, conversations. When you think you can't change, your body prepares for defeat. When you begin to believe you can, your nervous system subtly shifts. Shoulders rise, breathing deepens, eyes soften, presence expands. This is not magic. It's biology. Expectation writes emotional code into your body. Visualization, affirmation, intention. They work not because they trick the mind, but because they rehearse a new identity until the brain recognizes it as familiar. Practice becomes embodiment. Repetition becomes identity. You do not become what you wish for, you become what you consistently align with. But that doesn't mean pretending. It means remembering. Beneath every wound, the truest version of you has always waited. Transformation isn't about fabricating a new self. It is rediscovering the self untouched by fear, shame, or conditioning. It is the peeling away of armor you once thought was skin. As parts of you fall away, you don't disappear. You emerge. If shedding the past shapes who you are becoming, what happens when the internal awakening begins to challenge the persona you once showed the world? As the inner shift deepens, you eventually run into one of the most powerful moments in transformation, the unraveling of the persona you once wore to survive. That mask you built over years, the confident facade, the quiet, agreeable version of you, the person who played small to belong, the one who hid their truth to avoid judgment. It once served you. It protected you. But now it begins to feel heavy, suffocating, false. For a while it's confusing. You feel like you're losing yourself, but really, you're shedding a role you were never meant to live forever. The mind loosens its grip on who you should be and begins seeking who you authentically are. And authenticity is not a fixed destination. It evolves. Who you were last year doesn't invalidate who you are now. It simply shows you have grown. We learn early in life what earns love, approval, safety. We become adaptable. We contort. We shapeshift to be accepted. But as awareness expands, you realize survival patterns are not the same as soul patterns. The strategies that once helped you fit in now hold you back. And slowly, layer by layer, you begin letting go. This dissolution of ego isn't dramatic, it's subtle. You stop needing to be right all the time. You no longer seek validation with the same hunger. You no longer rush to prove your worth. You start feeling it internally. You don't grip your identity and you observe it. A softer confidence takes root, born not from shouting louder, but from finally hearing yourself clearly. And here's the surprising truth. Letting the old persona fall doesn't make you weaker. It makes you whole. You stop battling your inner world and begin participating in it. You trade control for presence. You stop performing and start simply being. And as you release the old self, something profound happens. Space opens. Creativity returns. Intuition wakes up. Joy doesn't need permission anymore. Pain doesn't define you. It guides and then dissolves. You realize emotions move like seasons and none of them own you. The deeper your awareness grows, the more life becomes less about becoming someone and more about returning to the person you were before the world told you who to be, before fear, before conditioning, before armor. That return is not regression, it's liberation. Transformation is not about achieving a perfect self. It's about remembering a true one. And the more you uncover, the more you realize identity itself is fluid, alive and responsive to growth. You're not sculpting a final self. You're learning to live aligned with your evolving truth. You release, you soften, you expand, and slowly, the world begins to reflect the peace rising within you. But as inner freedom grows, life will inevitably test your newfound clarity. And so what happens when the world challenges the identity you're stepping into? As this inner freedom strengthens, life will inevitably press against it, almost as if it's asking, are you sure this is who you are now? New clarity doesn't arrive untested. Old triggers return in disguise. People respond from memory of your past self, and some situations show up to see whether you'll shrink, react, or rise. This isn't failure, it's integration. Growth becomes real not in stillness but in motion, not in theory but in choice. There are moments when you feel pulled back into familiar patterns. Old habits whisper. Old insecurities tug. Some days the old identity tries to reclaim you, not because you're weak, but because the brain is adjusting to new wiring. Healing isn't forgetting the past. It's recognizing it without obeying it. You no longer respond from wounds, you respond from wisdom. And even when you slip, you don't collapse the same way. You recover quicker. You see the pattern faster. Awareness doesn't disappear. It waits patiently for you to return. This is the spiral nature of transformation, revisiting old lessons with deeper understanding, each time meeting them with more grace and less fear. One day you catch yourself walking away from chaos without guilt. You honor rest without feeling lazy. You speak your truth without rehearsing it. You choose peace without needing applause. And you realize this is strength, not loud, not dramatic, but steady, grounded, unshakable. But transformation isn't only internal, it reshapes your path. You may dream differently now. Your goals evolve. What once mattered feels small. And what once seemed impossible feels natural. You stop rushing toward outcomes and start trusting direction. Life becomes less about control and more about alignment. The future stops feeling like something you chase and becomes something you meet with presence. And yes, some people will resist your change. Some will misunderstand. Some will fall away. This is not abandonment, it is energetic truth. You are no longer available for what wounds you. You are no longer compatible with the version of reality you've outgrown. And that's not loss, it's evolution. Growth often looks like leaving before life forces you to. It looks like choosing yourself even when your old identity begs you not to. It looks like sitting with discomfort long enough to realize it cannot break you. Because transformation isn't just surviving change. It's becoming someone who no longer fears it. And through it all, a quiet realization rises. You are not who you were. You are not who you will be. You are who you are unfolding into. Right here. Right now, with awareness as your compass. So once the old world falls away and you step into a new way of being, how do you finally live this evolved self fully, without fear of returning to who you once were? When the old world has dissolved and a new sense of self stands beneath you, life feels different. Not because everything outside has changed, but because you finally have. You no longer carry the same urgency to escape or prove or chase. Instead, there is a quiet steadiness, a knowing that evolution is not a moment you reach. It is a rhythm you learn to live inside. Transformation stops feeling like an event and becomes a way of being. You make decisions not from fear, but from alignment. You choose relationships that feel safe, not familiar. You set boundaries without trembling. You rest without guilt. You move through uncertainty without demanding guarantees. The world doesn't suddenly become easy, but you become grounded enough to meet it with clarity. Over time, you notice subtle miracles. Silence feels like peace, not punishment. Solitude becomes nourishing, not lonely. Triggers become teachers instead of storms. Life no longer drags you, you participate with presence. And yet, even in this new clarity, the journey isn't finished, and because it never truly ends, identity continues to unfold. Awareness continues to deepen. There are new layers, new insights, new edges to soften. You don't fear that anymore. You welcome it. Transformation is no longer a battle. It becomes a companion. This is maturity, not perfection, but perspective. Not a life without challenges, but a self who doesn't collapse under them. You don't cling to control. You trust your capacity. You don't fight life. You meet it. You don't cling to who you were. You allow who you're becoming. And eventually you see the truth. Every ending in your life was not destruction. It was initiation. Every heartbreak was an opening. Every fear you faced made you more whole. Every version you shed brought you closer to your essence. You did not rebuild yourself from emptiness. You revealed yourself beneath the noise. You did not become someone new. You remembered what was always inside you. That is the real miracle, not that you changed, but that you finally allowed yourself to exist without apology. Awareness replaces fear. Presence replaces performance. Becoming replaces striving. Being replaces proving. And so you stand here, not finished, not perfect, but awake, aware, alive, with a mind that no longer hides from itself, a heart that trusts its own depth, and a spirit courageous enough to keep evolving, because the goal was never to just live. It was to evolve through living. To look back someday and say not simply, I survived, but I awakened. I grew, I lived consciously. In the end, transformation is not loud. It doesn't seek attention or applause. It whispers in your choices, your peace, your presence. And one day, without realizing exactly when it happened, you breathe deeply and know, I did not just exist. I transformed. I learned. I became. And I am still becoming.